Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
GSMC Baseball Podcast. Big welcome into the show. I'm your host, Lukas Moore. We are continuing to roll through all the divisions in baseball. Apologies for no episode Wednesday. We had some issues with the Wi-Fi, issues with getting the show out. But we're going to move forward, and we have a whole new episode for you today. The American League West. We have gone through the entire National League. And I had a lot of fun going through it. The National League should be really fun this year. We have two really competitive divisions, NL Central, NL East. Feel like there's four teams in each of those divisions that could very well be division champions, could potentially be the second place team in the National League to the dominant team out west, the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I just think it's a really intriguing league. Now, it's not as good as the American League. The American League has the Yankees and the Astros, and the Tampa Bay Rays look like they're pretty good. The Angels have a lot of potential. A lot of really good ball clubs in the American League. And another argument that I won't have in this show is that the American League has more bats. Why? They get a whole extra hitter in the lineup, a DH, which will make it interesting. Obviously, as it always does. Can't wait till the National League puts in the designated hitter. It feels like it's not long until that happens. But we're moving through it. We're moving through the American League West. My National League, just to recap, I had the Dodgers as the 1 seed at 110 wins. Yes, 110 whole wins. Then as the 2 seed, I had the Atlanta Braves with 92 wins. 3 seed in the Central is the Cincinnati Reds at 91 wins. And then I have the Mets as a wild card and the Cardinals as a wild card. Let me double check that. I have it in front of me. Yeah, Mets as a wild card, Reds as a wild card. And there's your 5 playoff teams. And I think it'll be Dodgers in the World Series. Now, I think the Mets match up fairly well with the Dodgers. That would be the first round matchup under my scenario. So maybe there'd be an upset in the DS, which if the Dodgers lose in the divisional series to the New York Mets, managed by Luis Rojas, boy, that'd be incredible. It'd be something crazy. Luis Rojas, he's the manager of the Mets because of this entire cheating scandal, which that moves us into the American League West. It moves us into what will be the most controversial division in baseball. It moves us into what might be the most interesting division in all of sports this year. Why? Because the largest villain in sports is in this division. Now, I've been on this show and I've been on other shows and I have said repeatedly that this Astros situation, it is deplorable that you would cheat in the game. It's unbelievable that it happened. Major League Baseball should do everything within its power to punish all of those parties involved. And I do agree that players should be suspended. The problem I have and have had with this discussion is the fact that we want to strip a World Series from the Houston Astros. One, I think it's ineffective, right? I mean, what does it do other than symbolism? Which some would say, oh, well, sports is about symbolism. So you take away the title. Yeah, but what are you going to give it to somebody else? Did we not play the 2017 season? Plus, we do not have enough evidence that this method of cheating was so effective that it definitely won them games. I just don't have that evidence. It's not in front of me. There's no way that it's there. The 1919 White Sox, who threw the World Series. Now, the Reds ended up winning it. You strip that title from the Reds because the White Sox didn't try? No, of course not. Right? Reds won the title. There's been spitballs. Baseball has been about finding an edge. And this sign-stealing thing is an edge, no doubt about it. But there have been Major League Baseball players that have come out. Sean Casey, a big example. who said he doesn't even like having signs. He thinks it ruins his reaction time. He thinks too much, right? Oh, curveball, and I missed it anyway. You still have to hit Major League pitching. It's an advantage, yes, 100%. I'll give you that. Should players be suspended? Yes. Should all the people that were fired have been fired? Yes. Should the Astros be fined and punished to the maximum potential of Major League Baseball? Yes. But I do not like all of us pretending that this is the highest crime of the century, and that I don't like Major League Baseball players saying they would never do it if they were in that locker room. I've got a feeling 95% of them would. If they were in the Astros locker room, your general manager and a bench coach are insisting that you try this, they do it. I really think so. I really think they do it. Plus, I don't like the excuses from teams that lost to the Astros as this sign stealing is the reason they lost. I just don't like it. And it's within the culture of baseball to blame others, to blame the rubber, all right, to blame the bad dirt, to blame a bad hop. It's just, it's built into the culture of baseball. It's my least favorite thing about this sport. It drives a lot of people away from it. But that's what everybody's doing. Aaron Judge, Cody Bellinger, all these guys who did not perform on the biggest stages, who had their opportunities to win their respective series against the Houston Astros, and they didn't take those opportunities. Those guys are now using this as the reason they lost, which it's not. It's not the reason you lost. It might be a factor. It might be a small percentage, but it's not the reason you lost. And you should be arguing that these guys need to be punished, but saying that you want them to strip the title and what, give it to you? Cody Bellinger, who batted 142 in a season, pretend that it never happened, pretend like they didn't pitch or field or bat with runners on second. I think it's a little overblown. And I said 3 weeks ago on this show, I didn't want to talk about this cheating scandal anymore. And it just keeps coming because guys keeps talking. So I guess it's going to keep happening, which is fine. But that is what sets up this division, the American League West, this entire scandal. Because these fans of the Angels and the Athletics and the Rangers and the Mariners, they will be very harsh to Houston when they're on the road. And this is really important for baseball that Houston wins this division. It is crucial for baseball that the Houston Astros are good this year. Crucial. It's unbelievably crucial. Let me lay out a few reasons why it's crucial. Number one, baseball finally has a villain, an interesting story, right? Somebody to cheer against. We really haven't had that. The Yankees have been out of the World Series for long enough, and the Yankees have been so good for so long, they've kind of fallen out of the villain role in the United States, right? Especially when they've got players like Jeter and you have the respect commercial. The Yankees have kind of fallen out of the villain role. The Dodgers would be the next best team to be the villain, the team from Los Angeles that spends a bunch of money, and they can't find a way to win a World Series, so nobody thinks they're a villain either. There wasn't anybody. There wasn't anybody that the entire country would root against, and some would root heavily for. We have that now. It is the Houston Astros. And them coming out and being bad this year would be disastrous because you would lose this villain. You would lose this storyline throughout July, throughout August, throughout September, into the postseason. The Astros need to be involved for this season of baseball to have a nice little ratings boost. Secondly, you don't want the Astros to fall off the table this year and everybody gets to say, well, look, it was the cheating scandal. They cheated. That's the whole reason that they were successful. Because then even guys like me who say it doesn't matter that much, I'm going to have to face reality and answer a lot of tough questions. In baseball itself, fans will be like, well, that entire season, that entire 3-year stretch maybe, we need to throw it out the window. And when you throw out a whole year or 3-year stretch in sports, yeah, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And it would look so bad on baseball. If the Astros were bad this year, You would lose a great story, and you would gain a worse headline. So the Houston Astros winning this division, being one of the best teams in the American League, and I think competing in the ALCS and the World Series is what's best for baseball this year. We'll talk about this division, dive into it team by team, excuse me, on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Give us a follow on Twitter at GSMC_baseball. It's important for baseball, everybody. The Astros being a successful team is important. Helps ratings, helps the reputation of the game. And imagine an Astros-Dodgers World Series. After all this smack talk back and forth in the spring, after everything that is about to happen throughout the course of the year, Astros players will be thrown at and booed, and beer will be thrown on them. The unimaginable will happen to the Houston Astros this season. The unimaginable on the road. Now imagine they face all that. You get to October, you know they're not cheating, and they stare down the Los Angeles Dodgers. I mean, that'd be a great World Series. Why? Because the entire country would be cheering for the Dodgers, except for Houston, who now, Astros fans, some of them might have doubt. Maybe we did cheat. Maybe we aren't good enough without this sign stealing. But if they're in the World Series, you forget that. Houston's going to be way behind this team. I mean, Houston is going to be unbelievably in support. And a lot of people around baseball will say, listen, I think they're a great team. You know, they made a mistake and it doesn't matter. It matters for sure. But like, they were still a great team. They still probably would have and could have won the World Series. They didn't need this. And now you have this weird support for some people that think they're not a villain. It's a great sports story. If it can happen. If it can happen. Let's find out if it can happen. Let's work our way through the American League West. And we'll start with the Seattle Mariners. This used to be the smallest division in baseball. Remember, there used to be 4 teams in this division, 6 teams in the National League Central. That 6th team in the NL Central was the Houston Astros, who are now in, obviously, the American League West, which they fit so much better here and so much better in the American League. Right? And the 6-team National League division was weird. And 14-1, I'm so glad they fixed that and put interleague play throughout the year. And that was one of the better improvements of the baseball schedule we've seen. Okay? Let's go ahead and start at the bottom, the Seattle Mariners. All right, so how we do this, just if in case this is the first time you've listened, we base our standings the way I go through this on the Pacoda projections. We go last to first based on how Pacoda has it ranked. I give you the Pacoda projection, Roto World, which is a composite projection from a couple other projection sites. Zips just came out with their projections. We won't use those. And then we use the Roto World, the Pacoda. I tell you the record in 19, and then I give you a range. So I call it the Lukas range. The least amount of wins that this team, in my eyes, is capable of. Now, I don't like to factor in injuries. It's not good to think about that because theoretically I could go 5 games one direction, 5 games the other. But within the realm of realism, within the realm of realistic thought, what's the worst season that this team, that this roster could have? And then what's the best season that they could have? So we start with the Seattle Mariners. Last season, 68-94, worst team in this American League West. And it's such a shame, too, because the Mariners had felt like they had some potential and it just never really worked. And that's basically been the story of the Seattle Mariners since they won the record 116 games all those years ago. And this lineup is underwhelming, to say the least. Roto World only has one of these players projected over at 800 OPS, and that's their catcher, Tom Murphy. You got Dan Vogelbach, Evan White, Kyle Lewis, J.P. Crawford, D. Gordon rounding out the order, Malik Smith up top, Shed Long, who used to be in the Reds minor league system, Kyle Seager, all right name. This is a bad lineup. There's just nothing here. There's no potential. There's no... I really don't see this lineup being any more than what these projections say. Maybe a tick higher. It's not a good lineup. It's not a good rotation either. Marco Gonzalez, Yusei Kikuchi, Justice Sheffield, Kendall Graveman, Taijuan Walker, who's out of his prime, Nick Markievius. These guys are not projected well by Roto World, and they aren't good pitchers. There's just really nothing here for the Seattle Mariners. You go through their roster, there's not a lot of hope. Plus, you add in the fact they are the Seattle Mariners. And it feels like they don't really have anywhere to go from here. And that's why my floor is 60 wins. I think they're a 60-win team at worst. Honestly, I could move that down to 58. 60 felt appropriate, though. I see them maybe losing 100 games this year. You know, you have Kyle Seager. They're just not a good ball club. I literally wrote down nope, because you look through some rosters, and you really can just say, nah, that's just not happening. This is not one of those things that's going to happen. And for the Seattle Mariners, I see their ceiling as a 79-win team. Yeah, rough for the Seattle Mariners. So floor is 60 wins, ceiling is 79 for this Mariners squad. Where do I think they end up? I think they end up at 63 wins. 63 wins for the Seattle Mariners this year. I think they're at the lower end of that projection. The ceiling is if they win a bunch of one-run games, which is always possible in baseball. You know, you have a couple guys have surprise years, and they get to 79 wins. Maybe even 81 if the world goes absolutely crazy. Don't think that'll happen. But 60 to 79 wins is what it is. All right for the Seattle Mariners. Now, on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about the Texas Rangers and what I think they are capable of in this season. But before we go to break, please follow us on Twitter at GSMC_baseball. Love to see your follow there. Spring training's about to get started, essentially. I mean, first games are coming today, I believe. I believe there's a game tonight. So we're absolutely excited for that. Love that we're going to get to see baseball. So it's a good time to follow us on Twitter, rate, review, subscribe, all those wonderful things on all your favorite podcasting platforms. We love all the love here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast. On the other side of the break, the Texas Rangers, 78-win team a year ago. What will they do this season? You're listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
GSMC Baseball Podcasts. I'm your host, Lukas Moore. Going through the American League West. We're going to jam two teams into this segment, Texas Rangers and the Oakland Athletics. And then we'll have the Angels and the Astros will get their own whole segment because I think those are the two best teams in the division. Although this division is really interesting in the middle to me, and with the Astros, they're a big wild card because, I mean, they could just be so affected by this on the road if the chemistry isn't there in the locker room and if they start bailing on each other and if they can't handle the pressure of being the villain of Major League Baseball, which Altuve, he's a soft-spoken guy. I don't know if they can be villains. If they can't, this division is going to be wide open for the Angels, for the Athletics. Will it be, though, for the Rangers? It's a team that won 78 games a year ago. Pacoda has them projected as a 73-89 team. Roto World, the exact same, 73-89. I predicted the Mariners to have 63 wins. And with the Texas Rangers, you've got big names in the lineup. They believe in their rotation, and there's not a reason that if you're a Rangers fan, you shouldn't believe in this lineup and in this rotation. Because it sounds pretty good. Shin-Soo Choo at the top. I understand he's old, but he's good for a 350-plus OBP. He could be over an 800 OPS guy. Elvis Andrus is still in this lineup. Joey Gallo. Danny Santana in the outfield. He's a guy that could get 20-plus home runs. Willie Calhoun could hit 20-plus home runs. Todd Frazier, we understand the success he's had. Rogan Odor, Robinson, Chirinos, and Ronald Guzman to round out the lineup. Nobody is projected by Roto World to have an under 700 OPS. You've got some really experienced hitters there. It's a lineup that could certainly, if everything goes right, produce a lot of runs. Certainly. Same thing with the starters. Corey Kluber, signed him. We understand how good he's capable of being. Mike Minor, he's been really good before. Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, Jordan Lyles, that's a good rotation. Is that a World Series rotation right now in this day and age? No. But if if Corey Kluber's at his ceiling, Lance Lynn strikes out a bunch of guys, and the back end of the rotation can figure it out, yeah, it's a good enough lineup to be competitive. It's a good enough lineup to potentially make the playoffs. Certainly. For the Rangers. Bullpen's solid. It's nothing to scoff at. It's also nothing to praise. We'll see if they can figure out their closer situation. Just nothing set in stone for the Texas Rangers. It feels like they'll spread it out throughout the bullpen. And basically, you're just asking a lot of guys to have a good season. So when you look at a team like this, there's potential here. There's also potential for failure. Right? Andrus, Choo could be completely out of his prime. You could have guys fall off like Todd Frazier. The back end of the lineup not be any good. Corey Kluber's not that good anymore. And a lot of the projection systems, Roto World and Pacoda, see that scenario playing out for the Texas Rangers. Where these guys just don't have it anymore. It's a good named lineup, but not a good results lineup. You've heard of them. That's why you think they're good, but they're really not. That's what the projection systems are saying. Now, this is the one where I put their floor, the Texas Rangers, very close to the projection. Normally, I'm matched up with these things. But after looking through that lineup and looking through that roster, I see the floor of this team as 71 wins. One, you've got a lot of veterans. They won't lose more than 91 games. I just don't see this group of veterans, this organization, the Texas Rangers, with a lot of success in history, losing more than 91 games. It just isn't in the cards in my brain. So I feel like the floor is 71 wins. The ceiling for this team, I also don't imagine it being super high. I don't think this is a 95-win team. No way. I don't think there's an MVP in the lineup. I don't think there's a Cy Young in the rotation. And you need one of those for me to say 95, 97 wins. Or just unbelievable depth. And they don't really have any of that. But what I do think is this team, if the veterans come back, have their best season, not necessarily their best season, but a good season, and they cobble things together, the Texas Rangers could certainly be an 88-win team. That's my ceiling for them this year. 88 wins for the Texas Rangers. And I actually think they'll be closer to 88 than 71. I think they'll be an 85-win ball club this year. I think the Texas Rangers will win 85 games in 2020, which is a good season. And if they make a deadline acquisition, which I obviously can't factor in here, I maybe factor in my prediction that they'll be a little more aggressive, but maybe they'll make a move. Maybe they'll make a push. And maybe they'll be a wild card team in the American League. Certainly possible. I think they end up at 85 wins this season. Solid season for the Texas Rangers. Oakland Athletics. We'll move to them right now before we get to the top two teams in the division. The Athletics last year, 97-65. Pacoda has them as an 84-77 win team. Roto-World as an 84-78 win team. Well, Pacoda is 85-77. And Roto-World 84-78. You understand. And this Athletics team, they're just always hanging around. Always hanging around. And last year, they were second place in this division. Ended up making the playoffs. And their lineup's got some really exciting pieces. I love Matt Chapman. Not necessarily as a hitter, although he's really coming around there. But I think he's the most electric fielder in baseball. Matt Olson, Mark Conha in the outfield. Chris Davis as a designated hitter. Piscotty, Murphy, Kemp back in the lineup. Semien at the top. Lorano. I think this is a solid lineup. I think this is a lineup that is a little better than the Texas Rangers. The Rangers lineup sounds better, but I like this lineup a little bit more, especially if Chapman, Olson, or Conha can figure it out in the middle of that order. Be an MVP candidate type player. Is that in their blood? I'm not sure. But if it is, then this Athletics lineup has a real opportunity to be great. They also have a deep rotation. Mike Fiers coming over from Houston, taking some heat. We'll see how he pitches this year. But you like Manaea, you like Montas, you like Luzardo, Bassett. I just think that it's a well-rounded, well-put-together back end of the rotation. And their bullpen's pretty solid as well. Hendricks at the top, Pettit, Soria. There's some real arms there. And this bullpen has the potential to be one of the better ones in the American League. And the staff is deep. The staff will keep them in games. It's about whether the lineup can find that spark, can find that elite level player, can really put things together. But to me, there's no reason this can't be the same squad as last year. And they won 97 in 2019. I just don't see what would keep them from winning 97 again. I don't see them winning any more than 97. But you go through that roster, you look through the roster last year, and you're just like, okay, well, why can't they get 97 again? So I put the ceiling at 97 wins. Listen, when the projection numbers say something like that, it's hard for me to say, well, I think they could get better this year and be a 101-win team. I don't really see that happening. I think the Athletics might have hit their ceiling as a team last year. And Billy Bean teams, they're really good at hitting ceilings. Right? And the Athletics have been really good at hitting their projection ceilings. Why their projection models are better than ours? They know more about these guys than we do. And the Athletics believe in this team. Now, I wish they'd play in a different stadium. But that's a conversation for another day. I think 97 wins is the ceiling for the Oakland Athletics this year. The floor, I have it at 79 wins. I don't really see this team falling all the way off the map. I don't think they'll be one of the worst teams in the division. I think that this is a 79-97 win team in 2019. I'm going to hold my prediction, though, my exact one. Because I gave you my Rangers at 85 wins. I gave you the Mariners at 63 wins. I don't want to hold the predictions for the last three. Because I want to give them all at once. So I'll give you the way I think that this entire division will play out. I am going to adjust the Rangers down to 80 wins. I chewed on it for a second. And I have the right to change. Don't scream at the top of your lungs. Tell me I can't change my prediction. You know what? Because I can. Why? My show. I'm an adult. I'll change my prediction. 80 wins for the Texas Rangers. I thought about it a little more. I was being a little generous. I was being way generous to the Texas Rangers. I think certainly capable of 85. And, you know, I might regret changing that prediction. But you know what? I'm going to drop it down one more. 79 wins. Why? It sounds better. 79 wins for the Texas Rangers. Because I really look at the Athletics. I like their lineup better. Their rotation is a little deeper. It's just they don't have the names. They're just not as popular as the Rangers players. I like the Athletics. We'll talk about how many wins exactly at the end of the show. We'll give the Athletics, the Angels, and the Astros prediction all in one fell swoop to give you the American League West standings. Before we get to break, follow us on Twitter at GSMC_baseball. On the other side, the Los Angeles Angels. We have two more teams to go through in this division. The Los Angeles Angels, 72-90 in 2019. They've been making offseason moves. They want to bring Mike Trout to the postseason, the most electric player arguably in sports. We'll see if they'll be able to do that. We'll talk about if they'll be able to do that on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
GSMC Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Lukas Moore. Rolling through the American League West. Rangers at 79 wins. Mariners at 63. And the Athletics, the Angels, and the Astros. I'll give you my predictions for each of those teams when we round out the end of this show. Because I want to give the top three, I think, in this division. I want to give my order for how I think they'll finish. See if you can guess, right? We talked about the Athletics as being a 79-97 win team. I like the ceiling of this squad. I like Matt Chapman a lot. One of my favorite players to watch in baseball. It's just about whether they can have a star player in the middle of the lineup. They can have an MVP-type candidate, somebody to really drive in runs, and if they can do well in close games, because I think the rotation will keep them in a lot of games. I think their bullpen will keep them in a lot of games. It's not a staff or rotation or all those words you can use for pitchers that is going to carry you, but they are good enough to win a lot of games. And the lineup is good enough to win a lot of games. It's just about whether they can bring it together. The Los Angeles Angels, 72-90 last year with Mike Trout on the roster. The projections much friendlier to the Los Angeles Angels this year. 86-76 by RotoWorld, 87-75 by Pacoda. So those are good projections. They're projected to finish second in this division by all the models. Astros obviously projected first by all the models. And this lineup, when I read it to you, you should start salivating a little bit. Mike Trout, Anthony Rendon, Shohei Ohtani, Justin Upton, Albert Pujols, Tommy La Stella, Andrelton Simmons, Jason Castro, and Brian Goodwin. That's a good lineup. And listen, Pujols, you can criticize him all you want, and I know he's getting old, but he's still Albert Pujols in moments, right? And he's that veteran presence in the lineup. Veteran presence. You always need him tossed in there. And you see a lot of really good teams have a veteran that's been there and done that throughout his career. And they, there they are. That's Albert Pujols. And they help out in the lineup. They're not a great hitter, but they'll figure it out. And Pujols will try to play that role on this Angels team. But you have Mike Trout and Anthony Rendon at the top of the lineup. And these guys are incredible. Mike Trout might be the greatest baseball player of all time at this point in his career. Heading into his age 28 season, last 3 years, he's been over 1,000 OPS each of those years. He's hit at least 30 home runs. He hit 33, 39, 45. He stole 20 bags twice, 11 bags last year. He's an incredible baseball player. Mike Trout. That doesn't even count how valuable he is in the field. He's one of those few players in baseball that truly elevates his value by how he plays in the field. I mean, there are some of those guys who add wins to a team by how well they field, but honestly, it's not a long list, right? And that's why you see so many teams play players out of their natural positions. Why? Because their bat matters more than the glove. That was one of the discoveries in the early 2000s by the Moneyball era. Just get guys that are effective in the lineup. Forget whether they can play the position or not. Can they play it at an average level? If so, put them in there. And that's kind of how it's all gone. But Mike Trout and Matt Chapman, and there's guys in this league who are so good with the glove, they do add wins to your ball club. Ohtani, can he stay healthy? This guy's ceiling is unlimited. He's got power. He can hit for average. He can be an MVP in this league. Shohei Ohtani. I believe that. And that's why he was so coveted by so many teams coming out. He's entering his age 25 year. And last year, in just 106 games, he had 18 home runs and had an 848 OPS, 925 the year before. He gets on base. He hits home runs. He can steal bags. 12 last year, 10 the year before. Hasn't even played 120 games yet. Now, can he stay healthy? That's the question. Because if he can stay healthy, you also get Ohtani in your rotation. And this is a guy with Cy Young potential. Last season, well, his age 23 year, he didn't pitch last year. He had a 3.31 ERA. First time ever in Major League Baseball. You're telling me if he can't get better when he's supposed to be in the rotation this year? Can he give you 100 innings? It's so hard to project Ohtani on this team. He's the wild card, right? Because kid could be an MVP at the plate and a Cy Young on the mound in the same season. Seriously. He's that talented. And if that happens, well, the Los Angeles Angels, they're going to win. They're going to win the American League West. Kept trying to say the National League West. I don't think he'll be that healthy, and I don't think he can contribute that many innings and that many at-bats to be both a Cy Young and an MVP. But when he gets later into his career, can he certainly develop into that? Yeah, he's still young. And Ohtani is that guy who could be electric. And that's what makes this Angels team so scary. You could go 1, 2, 3, top of the lineup, 3 MVPs. Mike Trout, Anthony Rendon, Shohei Ohtani. And then that same day, you could have Ohtani on the mound, could be a Cy Young candidate. And that's what makes the Los Angeles Angels scary. What brings them back to the floor is the rest of the team. The rotation. Outside of Ohtani, who you get inside it for? Julio Teheran, 4.4 ERA projected this year by Roto World. And he's been good in the past, yeah, but the guy's 29, coming off a 3.81 ERA. That's supposed to be your innings eater. Andrew Heaney, Dylan Bundy, Griffin Canning. I feel like there's a lot of misses in the rotation. Bullpen, same deal. We relying on Hansel Robles. Never even heard of him. 3.82 ERA, could be the closer. And it's just a bullpen of no names and high projected ERAs. So when I look at the Los Angeles Angels, it is a floor-ceiling situation, certainly. But it's a ceiling that's capped because of the rest of the rotation. Now, I think this can be a 92-win team. And if the Astros fall apart, maybe a 95-win team. 92-win ball club, 94 wins, their ceiling. If the Astros fall apart, this can be a 94-win team. And if Ohtani hits his ceiling and can deliver you 110, 120 innings, can deliver on the mound and deliver at the plate above expectations, which is certainly possible. He has the talent. Trout is Trout. Rendon is Rendon. Pujols has a nice veteran year. This can be a deadly lineup. Could arguably be the best lineup in the American League. Arguably. Although the Yankees and Astros obviously have things to say about that. But a top 3 that the Angels could have could make them certainly the most exciting lineup in the league. And that's a 94-win team. But also, you've got a lot of injury risk here. Ohtani could end up barely pitching. Ohtani could end up, being affected at the plate. Pujols could really be getting old. The back end of your lineup could be even worse than we think it is. Your rotation has a lot of guys that you're relying on to hopefully be in the mid-4 ERA. They could be 5 ERA guys or 4.8 ERA guys. You start to have that happen, this Angels team could only win 77 games this year. A little wider of a range, but 77 wins is on the table as well for the Los Angeles Angels. What do I think they'll win? Well, I'll tell you on the other side of the break. When I break down the Houston Astros, the final segment of the show, we go through who I think is the villain of all of sports right now. And I mentioned at the top of the show why it's such a great thing for baseball. It can be, and how important the success of this Astros team is. We'll talk about whether they'll find that success in 2020 after this. You're listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Final segment of the show. We have gone through the American League West as we go division by division through all of baseball. Still have the American League Central and the American League East to go through. And then we'll have my full predictions for the entire season, and we'll obviously go over them again. And they can be adjusted slightly if something dramatic happens throughout spring training. Obviously, things are subject to change before the first date of the season. And then after the season starts, I can change my predictions from that point too. Okay? I'm not meaning to be that intense. I'm not that intense. It doesn't really matter. These are just for fun. Just an easy way for us to break down these teams and what I think can happen to these teams in 2020. So we talked about the Mariners and the Rangers. Both teams, I believe, will finish below 500, 63 wins, 79 wins. We talked about the Athletics, floor to ceiling being 79 to 97. We talked about the Angels, floor to ceiling being 77 to 94 wins. I did not give my prediction for those two teams. Why? I wanted to wait until we got through the Houston Astros. And I wanted to wait until we have the top three settled so I can give you the order of the top three at the same time. Make it a nice reveal. So let's talk about those Astros. Last year, 107-55. Pacoda has them as a 98-win team. Roto World has them at 98-64 as well. And obviously they're great. I mean, when you look at this lineup, when you look at this rotation, even with the loss of Garrett Cole, it's just excellent. It's deep. It has star power. It's got potential. I really like it. Springer, Altuve, Michael Brantley, Alex Bregman, Yuli Gurriel, Jordan Alvarez, Carlos Correa, Josh Reddick, and Martin Maldonado. And that doesn't even really count in the bench, which has some really good hitters, Kyle Tucker as well. Miles Straw, shortstop, Diaz. It's a deep lineup. They're really good in a lot of really important places. And their rotation is great too. Verlander, Greinke, McCullers, Brad Peacock in there as well. It's a solid rotation. It's a rotation with Cy Young potential. And their bullpen, good too. Presley, Osuna, James, they can get it done. Not an elite bullpen by any means, but certainly good enough with the rest of this team to be super competitive and be really, really good. And I think that's all you really need to hear about the Houston Astros. You know they're good. Now, you can decide whether you don't like them because of the cheating scandal. You can even make the point to me, and we'll find this out, that the cheating scandal is the only reason they had success over these past few years. That we are now overrating all of these players because they won't get to cheat this year. And them cheating is the only reason they had so much success. Believe that if you want. Believe it if you want. I'll let you. Nothing I can say to that right now. But I can say something in the middle of the season. When this team does what I think they'll do, which is be the most motivated, hungry, angry team in all of baseball, I think it's on the table that this Astros team is the best team in baseball this year. I know they lost Garrett Cole. But when you're told that, hey, you didn't win that World Series, all those hours you spent on the spring training practice fields, all those hours you spent in the offseason, the day after day grind of winning 107 games, the millions of moments that did not involve sign stealing that you had to be successful in to win that many games. As an Astros player, you're now telling me that I'm not good enough? I should have that World Series taken away? The only reason I'm successful is because I cheated? That's motivating. And it brings a team together like nothing else. And they have the perfect manager for this. For this type of team. For this type of moment. Because Dusty Baker brings together locker rooms like no other manager in baseball. He has always found ways to get really talented players to play for each other and with each other throughout the season. Dusty is an incredible manager. I get he hasn't done it in the postseason, but I really think the postseason is a crapshoot in baseball. And it's about luck most of the time. And Dusty's been really close with a lot of really good teams. But the bottom line is, I think this Astros team can be really good. I think they can be the best team in baseball. And that's why I have 109 wins as their ceiling. 109 wins. Because it's the best lineup in the division. Best rotation in the division. And they're angry. They get to play as a team. It does get to be us versus them. Because every single player out there has told you, you're a cheater, you're not good enough, you don't deserve the World Series. We would never do what you did. And that's motivating, man. When you walk into opposing stadium, your family is threatened if they're sitting in seats. You got stuff being thrown at you. You're getting pitches thrown at you all throughout spring training. That's motivating. And Dusty will know how to channel that. While at the same time putting on a good public face. And not embarrass the organization any further. So to me, you can see it as the Houston Astros just had their number one advantage taken away from them. In sign stealing. You can see it as that. I don't think the facts say that. I get the commissioner's report can be doubted, but I think they made the World Series last year fair and square. So you think that. Here's what I'll think. I think that what was going to be one of the best teams in baseball already, a team that made the World Series a year ago, now is extra motivated. More than just a championship, more than just success on the field and money, more than just fame, all these things that motivate these players, more than just the pure love of the game. Now it's about pride. Now you're telling Jose Altuve he's not an MVP. You're telling this whole team they didn't earn a single thing, which you have the right to believe. And they have the right to go out and prove you wrong. And I think that's exactly what the Houston Astros will do in 2020. By the way, that is the best possible outcome from baseball. If they keep getting booed and they keep bopping teams on the head all year long, and they're this angry, villain-like, celebratory, great ball club that the entire country absolutely loathes, that's great for baseball. And I think it will be great for baseball. And I think this, all of a sudden, will go from a PR nightmare to one of the more entertaining seasons down the stretch specifically because of the Houston Astros. And I hope it's an Astros-Dodgers World Series. I might predict that. I will tell you whether I'm predicting that after we go through the American League. I think the Yankees are really good. There's some teams we still have to go through. But this Astros team, worst case though, let's talk about that. 88 wins. Dusty Baker isn't as good of a manager as I thought. Sign stealing did matter a little bit. These guys feel just disengaged. They can't handle the tough road crowds. They don't use it as a motivator, and they fall to 88 wins. Still really talented, but they don't win the division, and it's an absolute disaster for the Astros, and arguably a disaster for all of baseball. But I think that they could win 109, and in fact, I do think they'll win 101. 101 wins for the Houston Astros this year. Now, where do the Angels and Athletics fall behind them? What order do I put them in? Well, I think the Athletics will win 86 games this year. And I think the Los Angeles Angels will win 84. I'm just not ready to count on Shohei Ohtani. And bringing in a player like Rendon, it always works out on paper better than it does on the field. 84 wins sounds appropriate. And I just think these two teams will lag behind and fall out of the wild card race, and maybe they'll need to make a deal. I'd love to see Mike Trout carry that team, though. I'd love to see them in the postseason. So my final standings in the American League West, Houston Astros at 101 wins, the Oakland Athletics at 86, the Los Angeles Angels at 84, the Texas Rangers at 79, and the Seattle Mariners at 63. And there's your American League West. The Astros will win it and win it by a wide margin. 15-game margin. And I think that's good for baseball. I'm cheering for it. I hope the Astros win 110. I hope they go to the World Series. And honestly, I'm from Cincinnati. I'm a Reds fan. It'd be great to see them in it. But if it's not the Reds, I think it'd be a lot of fun. Right? Root for chaos. I think it'd be a lot of fun if it's Houston Astros. Just feels kind of like justice in some sort of way. At least from the way I've seen this entire thing played out. And played out by the social media mob and played out by the constant existence of whining and excuse making in the sport of baseball. But probably not how it will happen. I'm not sure the Astros will win the World Series this year. And I know 98% of people that just listen to me say that think I'm crazy. They think I'm rooting for cheaters. Now, I root for stories. I root for chaos. And I root for fairness in some sort of way. And I think the Astros will band together as a team, and I think they'll make this really, really interesting. And they'll make a lot of people nervous. Because if you're the Los Angeles Dodgers, you've talked all this smack. They stole this from us. They stole the ring. Even though Cody Bellinger batted 142 in the World Series and threw a ball away that gave away 2 runs. Even though that player played like that in the World Series, it is not my fault at all. They stole the ring from us because they stole some signs. I mean, that's crazy. But sure, okay, say that. But if the Astros beat the Dodgers in the World Series this year, that clip, this entire circus throughout the entire month of February, every quote from every player that said they're cheaters, they didn't earn it, stripped the title, will be replayed, will be shoved directly in their face. And to me, that sounds like chaos. That sounds like fun. That sounds like storylines. That sounds like rivalries. That sounds like baseball. Right? We turn it into a fun thing. That was the American League West. Astros, Athletics, Angels. Although Athletics and Angels, I'm going back and forth in my brain. I might change that. But Athletics, Angels, and then Rangers, Mariners. That's the division. That's how I feel about it this season. I thank you so much for listening to this show. We will continue to roll through the divisions next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. You've been listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lukas Moore, and I'll talk to you next time. This has been the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.